Hey everybody. Okay, let's make sure this is working real quick since we had some technical difficulties last time. And I'm not seeing it, but maybe there's a delay. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, cool. I'm just going to put this in the group real fast here. So welcome everybody. My name is Deanne Ramsey. I'm the creator and founder of the Spirituality, Science, and Metaphysics group, also of the Zoetic Path community, and we are all about the synergy between body, mind, and spirit. And this is Joshua Burkhart, life coach, hypnotist, and self-professed neurophilosopher. He's got some really cool stuff to talk about today. So I'm actually just going to hand it off to you, Joshua, and let you get going.
Great. So when we started talking about what we could bring forth to the community and things that I've seen help people in their behavioral change and changing their lives, what really struck me as a message that really has done a lot of transformation for people is our relationships to ourselves, right? And I wanted to explore this today with everybody through kind of the Western lens and how that developed, and then go back a bit to the ancient traditions and forward to today and what we know about the brain and how this can help us in our own lives and really hold compassion for each other and for the rest of society.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So where do you want to start?
So let's start with the concept of self. When I'm working with clients, a lot of the time we're working on behavioral change, right? And so they'll come in for weight loss or for smoking cessation or to stop drinking, and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? And what I hear a lot in our dialogues are comments about like self-will. Like, I got home from work last night and I've been good all week and I ate that donut I've been avoiding the whole week, and then they start beating themselves up, and it's like, I'm a horrible person, or I have no will, or I always do this, it's never going to change. And what I hear in that, because I used to study, or I studied philosophy, and what I hear in that a lot is this concept of I, right? Like, I am this person who makes all my own decisions, and thus I'm responsible for all my own decisions. And if something falls short, it's just because I'm bad, or I've done something wrong, or I don't have the strength or the self-control or the will. And that's how you hear the conversation happening in all sorts of fields all around the country, right? And all around the world. The person's depressed and they're like, I can't get out of bed. I don't know why I can't get out of bed. It's still common for people to be like, you just need to or what is it? Like, pull up your pants and like buckle on your shoes and get out there and like
pull yourself up. Suck it up.
Yeah, suck it up. Like, just be strong. I've had that before. Like, you just need to do this, right? And particularly, I feel like that is the mode for, I know from my parents' generation and their parents' generation, is just suck all this up, right? Yeah. And then we see how that works out in life, right? Like, it works out with like a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of bad coping mechanisms and behaviors like that don't serve them, and can like cause addiction and can cause familial strains, relationship strains, and cause a lot of problems, like for the person, for the family, for society. And so I wanted to like dig into like, where's this concept coming from? Where is this like such a strong relationship coming from our relating our actions to who we consider ourselves as being, and how we own our actions. And in the West, I feel like that starts with Descartes, right? Many people are familiar with, I think, therefore I am, right?
Yes.
And what that tells us all is our thoughts are us, right? Like, we know we're here because we're having these experiences, we're having these thoughts. I know I'm here because I know I want to go eat, or I want that donut, and I'm having all these thoughts, and that is what makes me me. It's what is in my head. And then that develops into Kant, who is a German philosopher, who says we're all rational agents, right? We are our thoughts, but we have control over what we're doing, and we have control over our thoughts, and we have control over our actions, and we're rational people, and we need to act rationally. And this is like the whole spirit behind the Enlightenment movement of Europe, which becomes the spirit of the American Revolution and the spirit of democracies all over the world. And the spirit of Western society is we are our thoughts, we are what we think, and we are rational people who should be able to make rational decisions and create a rational world, right?
Right.
And it's in all of our institutions. And it's the way we relate to ourselves. But it's not what science is showing us, right? And it's not what human experience is showing us. Like I can be rational sometimes. I'm not the most rational human being. And I don't expect anyone to be the most rational human being, right? Like we have emotions, we have stress, which really changes our ability to be rational. We have conflicts, interfamilial projections, and all these things that really break down that notion that we're just a rational human being making choices. And you start to see that evolve in Europe, right? We have Freud, who is saying like there's a conscious rational side and there's an unconscious side, right? And he really develops that. And if you take a psychology class, they're like, Freud opened all this up, and it's great. But we still, a lot of the time, act like we're just rational people. Like when I'm sitting down with my clients, like there's a couple who might be like, maybe it's this unconscious thing. But most of them are just saying like, I should have chosen not to smoke that cigarette. I should have chosen not to do this. And like, I did it, and thus I'm just bad, or I just don't have strong will. And we have it really soaked in that message. Like there's this unconscious aspect. And after Jung, after Freud, you have Jung, who says like it's not even just a relation of consciousness and unconsciousness. Like there's this whole world in there, right? Like there's all these archetypes and all these things moving through us in society and interacting with each other. And I'm sure, like, it's particularly in this group, like, I'm sure there are a lot of people who love Jung, and I love Jung, but it's not the most common way of looking at the world. We're still very much in this rational mindset of we need to own our behaviors, and we should have complete control over them. And after Jung, psychology kind of develops in a couple different ways, right? You have behavioralism, which is like we can't even say what's on the inside. All we can say what our behaviors are and how to change them. And then now you have more of a pharmaceutical psychology, right? Which is how do we change these behaviors by manipulating our chemistry? And neither of those really deal as much as what is our relationship to self, right? Like who am I and how am I relating to our actions? But modern neurology is starting to show that, right? And I found that when I have these conversations with clients, it really starts to open up room for them to make change when they start to realize what is happening in their own body and what is happening in their own mind, right? So, for instance, with addiction, like when we have this habit, like a cigarette addiction, for instance, when we have this habit that for the last 5, 10, 20 years, every time we get stressed out, we go and we smoke this cigarette, and we have maybe a routine, like we do it every single day when we get off of work, or we do it every single break, or we do it right before bed. Neurologically to our body, not only like the addictive substance of nicotine itself, but we've signaled in a ritualistic way, like this is how I deal with stress.
Right.
So when we quit it, that's great, but we're still going through our day and we're still accumulating stress, and that had been our coping mechanism. And as far as relating to ourselves, when we're getting into those stress states, what happens is, I'm going to geek out a little bit here. The noradrenaline and the dopamine in our systems that get triggered by the amygdala, which gets triggered by the stress, starts to overwhelm our prefrontal cortex.
Yes.
And our prefrontal cortex is what Kant doesn't know he's talking about, but he's talking about the prefrontal cortex when he says we're rational people. Like, this is what makes good decisions. It's what makes the decision, I want to be healthy, I don't want to smoke, or I'm going to eat healthy all day today and I'm going to go to the gym later and it's going to be great and I'm creating this great person. And when it wakes up in the morning and the prefrontal cortex is in gear and it's going, or it finally got caffeinated and now it's going, it's great, right? And it's got these plans and it's got these intentions.
Oh, yeah.
And the day happens and stress happens and work happens and traffic happens and the kids happen and the amygdala starts to be like, oh, there's all this stress. I need to kind of take over the show and run things. So it starts pumping out noradrenaline and dopamine. And both of these overwhelm the prefrontal cortex because just like Taoism teaches, everything needs to be in balance. The brain needs to be chemically balanced. Too little and of dopamine or noradrenaline and your brain's not going to work the way we want it to be working, right? Too much, same thing. So when it gets overwhelmed, it starts to shut down, which leaves you operating from the hippocampus, which is much more routine habits and behaviors. It's what runs our memory or records our memory and our spatial relations, which is why we can do things on autopilot. Like we can be super stressed out, like just got chewed out by the boss or whatever, driving home and be like, okay, every day on my way home, I go to this restaurant or this store, or I have to pick up the kids and I have to do these things. And we just run through these things in this monotonous, conditioned process, right? And that's how we're able to do it. And it's why society really works on making sure things are familiar to us. You walk into a store, they're like, hi, how are you doing? You go and you grab your stuff, you go up there, it's, how's your day going? We all say it's going great. And they give us our stuff, we pay and we leave. Because if we're in a stressed state, we're not going to be able to figure out much more than that, right? But our hippocampus can get us through those regular interactions and get us home. And when the stress starts getting even more so, our hippocampus starts turning off, going offline. And if we're under continuous stress for long periods of time, the neurons in our prefrontal cortex start to withdraw into themselves. And our hippocampus starts to shrink. And our amygdala starts to grow. And this is the fight, flight, or freeze. And it's not rational. It's making irrational decisions. So when we have promised ourselves, like, I'm not going to eat to solve my emotions, I'm not going to eat sugary foods, or I'm not going to smoke that cigarette when I get home. And we can go for a few days off of willpower and be like, yeah, I've got this. It's great. But when we get triggered and we're under a stress scenario and our prefrontal cortex is shut down and that person who woke up that's like, I'm going to be super healthy, isn't there anymore, and we're running with the amygdala is like, hey, I know the answer. Those cigarettes, that is always what has worked for me, right? That donut is always what has worked for me. That pizza instead of like a healthy dinner is what has worked. We're alive. So obviously this has worked. Let's eat that pizza. Let's smoke that cigarette. Let's have that third glass of wine. Let's do whatever it is we've always done. And we're going to stay alive. It's great. And then we do it. And maybe later that night or the next day when we wake up, we're like, what did I do? Why did I do that? And we realize that we don't realize it. Normally we just blame ourselves. Like, oh, I was weak-willed. I just didn't do the right thing. And then we go through and we repeat the pattern over again. Like, I'm going to be better today. And then the stress happens and we kind of fall back into it. And I see that we're getting some feedback on the Facebook group. And the way that this is set up is it's kind of hard to follow along with that feedback. So we'll we'll get to that at the end of the broadcast, so I can respond to everyone better. Not really able to see all the messages right now.
Yeah, I think someone just mentioned maybe you were getting a little bit of sound feedback. You might need to just turn your speaker down or move away from it a tiny bit.
Okay.
I wasn't picking up any, but it could be coming through on their end.
Okay. Is this better?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So it's this relationship with self. If we continue to think of ourselves as rational people who are supposed to make good decisions, and if we don't make good decisions, great. Thank you. If we don't make good decisions, we're just failing. If we continue to think of ourselves as that, we're going to continue to be in the same loop, right? But if we can start, and it's great when I'm talking to clients, I'm like, no, your prefrontal cortex just shut down. Like, you're not a horrible person. You're just stressed. It allows us to start to really look at, like, what can we change to stop this cycle, right? If you're getting stressed, what other behaviors can we use that can reduce your stress, like meditation or setting up another ritual? Like, you're trying to quit smoking, maybe set up a tea ritual where you sit down and you, like, tea all throughout Asia is a really huge ritual, right? You sit down, you wait for the tea to boil, put it on the stove, don't microwave it, just give it its time to brew. Like, sit there and sit with it, right? I had some clients, it was a weird week where I had like 2 weeks of clients come in, and there were these 5 different women, and they all had the same thing. They were all on for weight loss, and they all were like, I've been doing everything, like I'm working out, I'm eating all the right foods, I'm thinking dinner. It was okay. And there were like 5 different people with this same thing, just one after another. And when we went through their days, like, they weren't getting all the food they needed because they were so busy at work that they weren't getting the food they needed, right? They were coming straight home from work. They were super tired. They were super stressed. They had to get dinner on the table. So what they did is they opened up a glass or a bottle of wine. They poured themselves a glass and they drank while they were cooking. And then they drank while they were eating. And then by that time, you're a little bit like buzzed, and they had that third glass. And if we look at that chemically, like, their blood sugar was low on their way home from work. Wine has a ton of sugar in it, right? So the body is like, get home. We know what's going to cure this blood sugar problem. It's that wine in that fridge, and you can get it immediately, right? So they're taking care of that need by having that wine. There are other ways to do it, and we'll get into that. But they were taking care of the need, right? They were also dealing with this stress because wine can help us relax, right? And they were getting to a point where they were so stressed out and their blood sugar was so low that they didn't have the self-control, particularly once intoxicated, to really stop before that third one. So all we had to do is, when we remove it from you're a rational person, you need to make rational decisions, and you need to do these things, to what is happening in your brain and what is happening in your body, we're able to find what works for them, right? So I asked them, like, before you even get home, have a protein snack, something super easy, just like some nuts in a bag, right? Some cheese. Eat that so your blood sugar is good when you get home and you're not desperate for food, right? You're not desperate for blood sugar. Then when you get home, please either meditate, make a cup of tea and sit with it, or even take a nap. Take like a 10-minute, 15-minute nap. Just
I'll do all 3.
Some rest. Yeah, just let all the chemicals inside that have been like flared up throughout the day just level off, right?
Yeah, right.
And then make dinner, right? And every single one of those people came back a week or 2 later, depending on their schedule, and they were like, that worked. Like, I'm no longer having the 3rd glass. Like, I stopped at 1 glass, or I just stopped drinking. Like, I don't even feel like I need that anymore. And so this really, when we shift the way that we relate to ourselves, and we kind of take that weight off of our shoulders, that we have to be perfect in our behaviors or a reflection exactly of who we are, and we start to realize, like, we are limited by our neurochemistry and our biology, and we can use that to our advantage. We really free ourselves, right? We free ourselves to start to look at how can we change our environment, how can we change our behaviors to allow ourselves to change and grow. And it allows us to create and develop patience and compassion for other people, right? Like when we, when I get super hungry, I lose the ability to think. I kind of just show up and I'm like, I'm starving. I can't make a decision whatsoever, right? And my girlfriend knows that.
Hangry.
Yeah. And I know people who get hangry, right? They get very angry and there's a lot of anxiety. And I know them and I know like, this isn't you. Like this, you're hungry. You need blood sugar. And so me and these people, we know how to interact with each other now, right? If I'm just like completely loopy, they're like, you need some blood sugar. I'm going to make the decisions because I know you can't right now. Like, here's some food I chose for you to eat. And if they come home and they're like super anxious, I'm like, you need some blood sugar. Like, here's some food. And it helps us realize that people in these fluctuating states of stress, trauma, low blood sugar, withdrawal from cigarettes or Facebook or whatever it is, like they're withdrawing from, they're not being able to be around their phone for an hour or two. When we're dealing with them, instead of just being like, you're supposed to be a rational person and relating to me in this way, we can really start to relate to people as entire systems that need balancing and need nurturing. And that is a lesson that I feel like we can be learning from modern science, and it's a lesson that has been taught over and over again in the ancient traditions, right? There's always been a multiplicity of self in the traditions. And ancient Egypt, my teacher told me there were 7 souls. I studied more the Middle Egypt, where there's 5 different souls and 5 different ways for the body and the person to relate to self. For Middle Egypt, it was the Ren, the Ka, the Ba, the Shoot, and the Ib. And this ranges from everything from your personal intuition and the Ib and like what got passed down today, we would say genetically, they say as a drop of blood from your mother, from her heart to your heart. And that kind of intuitive, deep knowing, to the Ba, which is all about what can I learn, like what can I consume, what can I like interact with, to the Shoot, which is like our shadow and our shadow side and our unconscious. And the ancient traditions had a way of dealing with all of these and recognizing like a person's not just what they present themselves to be. It's not just what they're acting in the moment. Like they are this complex cosmos inside. And that's really where we get that concept of like macro, micro, like we are systems within. And so because we're systems within, we can relate to all these other larger systems, like the environmental system, or social systems. And you see it, Taoism, where many people are familiar with the yin yang, but Chinese medicine and Taoist esoteric practices have 5 elements, 5 different ways to relate to the emotions and to relate to self and what's happening in the world. Shamanism often has multiple souls that have to be worked with and have to, shamans are often seen as having an extra soul, which is how they're able to do traveling between the worlds. China, you have the Hun and Po soul. So you have these consistent lessons. And even in the Western tradition, Aristotle talked about 3 different souls. You have the animal soul, which is pretty much like your energy, your vegetative state, your like ability to nourish yourself. Very basic. You have an animal soul, which is motion and emotion and sensitivities like senses. What arises from the ability to see, to hear. And then you have a rational soul, which is the human soul, which needs to be developed according to Aristotle. And a person is a combination of all these. And that is what science is trying to show us, is we're a combination of the amygdala, like this kind of just survival, deep-centered animal survival, and the hippocampus, which allows us to incorporate memory and learning and lessons. And the prefrontal cortex, which allows us to be rational, as Aristotle was talking about thousands of years ago. And I think it's in this bridge between the ancient traditions where we can kind of draw on the techniques they've already developed for us on how to interact with these different parts of selves, and the symbology they've already written out for us on how to interact with these different parts of selves, and combine that with what we're learning from modern neurology and nutrition and ways of really nourishing all parts of the body and the brain. When we pull these two things together, we can really make a lot of change in our lives and in the world. And I really want to invite us to do that, because I've seen it be massively transformative for clients.
Yes.
But it's so much bigger than that. When we start to look at this, we can see how the systems in the world are working, right? Like how there can be such a deep political divide in a country, right? How there can be such extremism in the world. It's not just these people choosing to act these particular ways. It's all of the ways that their inner system has been manipulated or uncared for or poisoned by poor nutrition or difficult environments or trauma or consistent stress or bad information, just a lot of bad information. And so it allows us to really, when we change this relation to self, it allows us to be more compassionate to ourselves and be more compassionate to the world, really. And I think that's really important right now.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people see someone who's addicted or struggling with some sort of behavior change, and in their minds it's like, well, this person just needs to this, they just need to that. Well, if they just go to rehab or they just quit or they just detox, but there's so many factors.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been addicted before in my own life. And I've taken peer wellness training because of that, to help other people with their addictions. And I really consider these things a blessing now. When they were happening, it was kind of horrible. But they're a blessing now because I know what it feels like from the inside. And addiction really is, when I first entered into studying it, when people say it's a disease, I wasn't sure how much I resonated with that. But it really is a symptom of, when we look at it neurologically and when we look at it socially, it really is a symptom not only of what is happening in the brain, but how society is having that effect on the brain, right? How our lives are having that effect on the brain. Like the ACE study with trauma correlates addiction to early childhood trauma, a higher correlation than cigarette smoking to cancer, right? There is more evidence to show that early childhood trauma leads to addiction than cigarette smoking leads to cancer. But we consistently see cigarette smoking commercials all the time, right? Society is aware of it. We don't get that same information about addiction. And I really feel like it's because we're still holding on to these models. It's because we're really still holding on to the model that we are rational, independent people who are absolutely tied to our behaviors and our actions, and that really don't have the ability to, because what it's trying to preserve is from us to make excuses for ourselves, right? That's what the social idea is. You need to be responsible for yourself, and we do need to be responsible for ourselves. But by not understanding the relationship of how we're actually connected to our consciousness and to our behaviors, we're not actually taking responsibility for ourselves. We're just beating ourselves up while the same cycle happens over and over again. And it's the fact that society has kept that model that really allows us to preach about certain topics and just completely ignore other really important ones, like what it, and how trauma really affects us and how stress really affects us.
Not only that, but things like epigenetics play such a big part where, for a lot of people, it's not always as simple as what you came into this life with. It could be your parents or grandparents when they've done studies on people from the Holocaust and world wars and different areas where it's still affecting them 2-3 generations later.
Yeah, exactly. Epigenetics does that, shows that explicitly, right? The experiences we're having are, and that's a new revelation, right, for the modern world, because a generation ago, and the way I was raised with science, we thought it was all just genes. Right? Nothing could change those genes, maybe some mutations, but those were all accidental. And now with epigenetics, we can show no, your trauma and your stress in your life does get passed down. And then when it gets passed down, it's not only passed down genetically, epigenetically, it's passed down environmentally, right? So our trauma, when so if you're a parent, right, and you've had your parents' epigenetic material passed down, you're passing that down to your children, but you're also reacting to your own trauma. You're also reacting to your own stress. You're also behaving in ways that maybe don't show or demonstrate the best coping mechanisms, that don't illustrate to your children how to deal with their own stress and their own trauma, because your parents were dealing with their own stress and trauma and didn't know how to deal with it. So you pass that down, and those things then become trauma and stress for your children, right? So it becomes compacted. And I've seen this with clients. I have personal experience of this. My mother's father came from Colombia and the Civil War there, and worked in America and passed on a lot of his trauma and stress, right? And for most of the world, if you haven't been the colonizer, there's a lot of history of the trauma and stress on your people. And so not only does he have that history, but he has a more recent history of the communism and the Civil War. And then he passes that on to my mother, where he doesn't know how to express himself or to deal with these things. And she had a very hard life from that, right? She had a very hard childhood from growing up with that. And she, that affects the way she's going to parent, right? And so we do, and this happens all over the world, and this happens in so many communities where people just point and they're like, why can't they get their shit together, right? Why aren't they changing? And it is compacted trauma. You look at the Middle East, all traumatized parties, all the way around. You look at these war-torn areas, and it really does. It affects everything. And when we talk about maybe some financial aid, we'll give them some money, or we'll give them some food, or we'll bomb the people who are bombing them. We're not dealing with that trauma. We're not dealing with that strain, and we're not actually taking care of it at the root of the problem, which is that these people have very basic, neurological and bodily wounds from what they've experienced, and these need to be treated and taken care of so that they don't turn into the next cycle and harvest of trauma and violence and affliction. And it's here at home too. It's in the mental health population. It's in the homeless population. It's in the addicts population. It's in our own repression of homosexuality. The way I was raised, my parents believed that high suicides amongst the homosexual population and drug addiction was a sign of spiritual sickness, because people were not making the right spiritual choice. I'm queer. Like I I can tell you it's also because it is because we're being persecuted. It's not also, it's because we're being persecuted. And they're starting to do research on states where homosexual marriages were legalized, and the suicide rates amongst teens like dramatically dropped. Right, like because society is starting to be more accepting, people are more able to live their lives, and this trauma is being reduced, and this stress is being reduced. But if you're not looking at what's actually happening in people, we can make up all sorts of theories about it being a spiritual sickness, or it being an energetic problem, or they're creating their own suffering reality. And then when we start to look into like what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the body, and how does society affect this, we can really start to see like, no, it's how we're treating people. It's really just how we're treating. And what do we give priority to? Like the nutrition, just taking care of ourselves and our bodies, and like giving ourselves tools and methods to deal with stress in a healthy way. And just bringing awareness and teaching like meditation practices and yoga and just all these ways that can really help us take care of and nourish these different parts of self. And that's not most of those things, like they're becoming more available, but they're still becoming more available in levels of privilege, right? Like they're not being made available to everybody equally. And we need to get that out there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think a lot of this research is fairly new, especially with genetics and the different things they're finding out now in the brain and how it works. And, you know, a few years back, the entire medical industry insisted there was no limbic system in the brain, or no lymphatic, I'm sorry. And now they're finding that there is. And actually, when you get enough sleep, it drains your brain and actually detoxes your brain. But if you don't get enough sleep, which is one simple factor, your brain is literally not functioning well. If you get less than 7 hours of sleep, you don't get enough oxygen. If you don't follow circadian rhythms, your body starts altering the amount of hormones it uses. So everything is synergistic. And I found personally, you mentioned addiction, I had trauma in my past and different points in my life. I found that just one thing wasn't really working. Just going to therapy wasn't quite working. Just addressing the emotional or spiritual wasn't quite working. It wasn't until I addressed all levels, my environment, myself, as you mentioned, the multiple selves, so that I could pull back and observe myself and my thoughts, and just so many things to take into consideration, that you can understand why some people will feel so stigmatized in our society when they try one thing and it doesn't work out, and everyone thinks, oh, they're a washout or whatever it is. There's just so many factors that come into play.
Yeah, exactly. And it needs to be holistic, and it hasn't been supported in our society. So this is something we're able to really start to learn, promote, and teach other people about. And that's the beauty of, I think what's happening right now is we're all like, people who are waking up to this and doing more research in this, and who are keeping up with the science and are bringing in what we forgot from the older traditions, and are starting to mix and merge these things. Like we can each go out there and like find like what resonates most with us, like whether it be the nutritional concept or whether it be the spiritual concept. We need to bring all of that into our own lives, but we can really start to teach what we specialize in to other people, because it's been forgotten. One of my pet theories of it all is like, we went through 2 world wars, right? We went through 2 world wars and a Cold War, where there was an insane amount of trauma all around the world, and an insane amount of stress, and just all this pain that got passed down, right? And I feel like it really cut us off spiritually, and it really like just demoralized the human spirit. And right after that, you start getting globalization, right? You get these 2 big wars between the ideology of communism and democracy. Both are Western philosophies, right? They kind of divide the world. One falls, and now we have market capitalist globalism. And it's been washing away all the old traditions, and it's been keeping us distracted from also help us out, right? And so now is the time to be bringing back these lessons and teaching these lessons and incorporating these lessons, because it's not what we were raised with. Like, my mom, thank God, she was like, I'm going to make a good meal like every night, right? And for her, that meant starches, vegetables, and meat. And that's not necessarily the best way to arrange nutrition, but it's better than a lot of people. Like, a lot of people I know in their parents' generation, it was all like canned food. It was all microwavable food. It's all like very little nutritious food, right? We have this
Right.
fast food epidemic now.
Well, we
Um,
had the entire industry is kind of buying out the science of our government. We
yeah,
had first it was the tobacco industry, and then it was the sugar industry, and then it was other things saying that eggs caused cholesterol. And each time the medical industry puts their, new edict out, and then a while later comes out, oh, wrong again.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so the good old fashioned holistic things that people have been doing for thousands of years work better, but then science kind of takes a while to catch up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because it has to jump a lot of hoops. It has to jump our economic hoops. It has to jump our government hoops, which are connected to our economic hoops now. Um, so we really are in a time where we need to cultivate this new awareness on every level, from spiritual to nutritional to self care. And I mean, I think you see that raised the way spirituality was presented to me as a kid, in our particular branch of Protestantism. We didn't have tools or methods like meditation. We didn't have tools or methods where you really try to listen back or listen to God. Like, you just kind of pray, hope things change, and like try to be the best person once again, because you're responsible for your actions. Try to be the best person you can be without taking care of your emotional self or your spiritual self through any of these other techniques that we're starting to reincorporate from Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism and shamanism and all these ancient traditions. And so we really are, like, as modern as we are and as tech savvy as we are, and all the gadgets, we're working in a bit of a dark age when it comes to actually taking care of the self and like actually relating to other people, and pulling this all together into a community of well nurtured, um, systems, groups of people who see themselves as systems and take care of it all and
Right.
nurture it all and balance it all and have compassion for the other people who are having to balance and nurture and take care of their own systems.
Do you think a big part of that could be a mentality that's somewhat specific to America or more developed countries? For example, I know a lot of people here think, oh, well, if I eat really healthy and I take all these supplements, I'll be okay. And they don't realize, okay, well, you're not addressing your sleep, you're not exercising. Or it reminds me of my clients where maybe they'll work on their physical body and they're physically really healthy, but emotionally and spiritually, they're totally disconnected and there's something missing, because in America, it's like compartmentalize and specialize everything. In medicine, it used to be that the doctor would look at everything going on in your life. Rarely does a doctor have time or enough education anymore in the Western allopathic system to do that. They can't address the emotional. They can't address the nutrition. On average, the MD gets less nutrition than, a college student in other degrees. And so to me, food is such a huge part of wellness. How would they not? And yet, in our American society, we've taken so many things and split them up. And I don't know if that's part of the Industrial Revolution, where everything was just divvied out into parcels instead of doing it in one piece. But it seems like that mentality is really filtered down to everything, to where people are just, oh, well, I'll just go do this, and they're ignoring this over here because they've separated it all. They haven't realized that it's all connected. So it's like I tell people in my clientele, hey, if you're suppressing emotions, for example, that is not separate from your physical body. And I think a lot of people think, oh, as long as I eat really healthy and I go to the gym and I do all these things and I'm sleeping, it's okay if I don't express this anger or sadness or whatever it is. And literally, it's actually causing pathology. And at the cellular level, your cells store emotions, changes things that they're just now beginning to understand and quantify with science. But a lot of holistic practitioners and spiritual healers have known this for a long time. And once that manifests in the body, well, now you've got all kinds of issues. Now the anger that you were suppressing is becoming a stomach ulcer. And now the other things in your body is becoming chest pain or shoulder pain or other things, or a rash on your skin. And it feels to me like maybe a lot of that's just the American mentality that it's separate. It's different pieces instead of all flowing together.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and you see that what's coming to me now, because I'm trying to formulate a response, and it seems to me like there's three pieces to that. One is the consumerism of the society, the fact that we have been programmed to believe there is a cure in some form of consumption, and that plays itself out in different ways, right? So when you have people who are seeking to cure nutrition or health wise, it's like, yeah, if I consume enough gym hours, right? If I get the right trainer, if I get the right protein supplement, like I can do this. Or it's if I.
Or my favorite is I'm going to lose all this weight and be healthy in 90 days. And I'm like, okay, it took you 10 years to get to this point. You're not going to get there in 90 days. There is no quick fix.
Not in a healthy way. Like maybe if you're like taking. I grew up in a town that had a lot of meth addiction, and so sometimes you would see people who drop like a lot of weight and be like, "How did that happen?" And it was like they just started taking meth, and it was like you can maybe do that, not in a healthy way, and like that's having to sit there with a client and be like, have patience, and exactly what you said. You built this weight. Through 10 years, not only of just consuming certain foods, but like of conditioning your behaviors and of how you've been relating to yourself for 10 years and the emotions that have been wrapped up in this for 10 years. And of like every aspect of this holistic being, like has taken 10 years to get to this point of this symptom, which is the weight. So it's going to take some time to get out of that. And but the consumerism mentality is, I want it now, and I want it
now. Yes.
And I want it easy. And you see that in everything, from whether it's going to be your supplements. And I take a lot of supplements because I am trying to balance all this.
Yeah,
for those people,
I do too.
Right? To people who will maybe not even won't be eating healthy, won't be going to the gym, but they're going to be spending their money consuming therapy hours or going to the next self-help workshop, or going to the next big speaker. And they're looking for that to change, and they'll have really powerful emotional experiences that makes them feel like I've had a breakthrough, but then things start to slide back again because their body is like, I'm shutting down because you're not taking care of me. Or I don't have what is huge is having the simple building blocks for dopamine, serotonin, and these other things that the pharmaceutical company will give you drugs to try to promote, but like you can really work on it nutritionally a lot of the time. So you have that consumerism, the emotional, psychological consumerism. Then you will have spiritual consumerism, where you're trying to get it fixed with a guru, or you're trying to go on a pilgrimage, or it's a new healing modality, or like if you just buy this $300 crystal set and arrange it in a particular way, it's going to solve it. And we show up the money, and we might have a powerful experience doing it, but the rest of our problems are going to catch up. And I think I think consumerism is how we perpetuate it. I think part of it is specialization. Like if you have a problem now, you're going to get shuffled between your neurologist, who might make a recommendation to see your cardiologist because really it's something different. And then you have to go back and forth to all these people with all their different specializations, who sometimes don't have a clue what is happening in the rest of the body.
It reminds me of a teacher I had
where you have and they've shown with skill development that unless you're keeping up consistently with learning, you start to lose your skills pretty fast. And that isn't something we mandate for doctors most of the time. Like maybe they have to have a little bit of brush up, but not continuous study. So we're not really we haven't created a system that makes the best doctors. And so you get out. I've had clients come in who they're obese to the point of their doctor is asking them to do anything to lose weight because they have other health issues, like chronic health issues, all from the obesity. And they are talking to me because they're finally at the point that they're like, I need to do something. And I'm like, okay, let's address the nutrition. And they're like, my nutrition is fine. I talked to my doctor about it. I'm carb loading, and these will be diabetic. Right. And I'm like, why are you carb loading? And their doctor was taught under some system that was popular at the time, which is if you made, there was a test and it had a really small range of success, like 40 to 50%. If you eat just a bunch more carbs, your body will start to create its own again. And so they're going to create this own insulin while they're taking insulin, which also increases weight. And their doctor hasn't talked to them about the fact that their antidepressant medication that they're taking because of their health and their weight problems and the depression that's developed around that also causes the gain of weight.
Massive weight gain.
And then 5 other medications they're taking to balance all the side effects and every other ailment in the body or is affecting their weight gain. And it's like, well, and it's hard for me because I'm a life coach, so it's really hard to be like, your doctor's wrong. Please stop eating carbs.
Right.
But it's these specialists who are like, this is what I've been taught maybe 20 years ago fixes the problem without considering, like you said, the whole aspect of the problem. And I think that leads to the third thing that kind of came to me, which is a savior model where so in America and in the West, we really like consumerism, right? We really like specialization because it makes us feel like someone really knows their stuff. And we really like celebrities. And I think it's that aspect where someone will make a really big breakthrough in therapy or in spirituality where they just had a really large transformation in one of these fields without exploring all the rest of them yet. And then they go out to advertise this. They go out to share this. They go maybe pessimistically, they go out to turn a profit on this, or optimistically, they go out to just help people with this thing that they've struggled with or that they've discovered, and they want people to know. But they haven't rounded off the whole picture yet, right? So now they're leading nutritional talks or they're doing workshops, but they're only focusing on this one thing without opening up the full door. And that just plays into the consumerism and the specialization of the society. And it loses that whole holistic aspect of it. And I do feel like there is so much knowledge out there now that it is difficult to be that old medicine man who was and there's so much knowledge and there's so much diversity in what we're going through and everybody has so many different experiences and there's so much in the world, right? That it's different than the older traditions which were we've all lived in the same location for thousands of years. We know how the plants and the animals and the seasons work here. We have really deep knowledge in this. The generations look really similar because time has just been passing slower for our society and our culture. So when that old medicine man sees someone with a problem, it's probably a lot easier to do the holistic approach because you have a lot fewer variables. And today we have so many variables. I mean, just diet preferences. It's hard for me. It's hard for me to work with people who want to keep a really strict vegan diet preference when I'm talking about nutrition, right? Because I'm not as well informed about it. And I'm trying to increase my information in so many other different realms that I don't know how to pull in all the information I need for particularly the vegan diet. To talk to a nutritionist who has more information on that, right? Because we can't specialize in everything nowadays. So I think that is the other factor of it is there are so many. Whereas in an older society or in these indigenous societies, you typically don't have people being I'm going to be vegan or I'm going to be paleo or I'm going to be doing. You eat the food that you've always eaten in this society. And so no one has to create these different systems for all these different ways. And because of the diversity, which is fantastic and beautiful and gorgeous, it does mean we need to all handle things in a holistic way, but also network our holistic healers. So when I'm working, particularly when I'm working with clients with PTSD, or I deal with a lot of clients who are vets, right, with PTSD, and I deal with a lot of clients who with bipolar, and I've worked with several cancer clients, and we need to create a whole group of holistic practitioners, right? Like I always recommend like see your acupuncturist and tell me what they say, so I know like where they're treating you here, and like let's get you a therapist, and I will work on like how I'm like the life coach, so we'll work on how you're structuring your behaviors and your habits, and like the nutrition side, and bring in some of the spiritual side. I'm more like the networker, right? That like brings it all together with people.
Yeah.
But we need to have those other like see your nature path, right? Um, and bring in a holistic network society. And that would be the beauty of a really well functioning society, right? Is that we recognize that we're all systems that need to be balanced, and we hold that space for ourselves and that compassion for ourselves and for other people, and we all have these amazing jobs of being that nutritionist or that farmer who grows like the super like good food that we need, or that shaman who does like the spiritual work but also realizes like you need to do like the physical work, and because all that was incorporated, right? Like in shamanism, you would often like go, you'd have to go out in the wilderness to like prepare for a ritual or stuff. Like you're hunting all the time, or you're growing crops all the time. Like you've got that physical labor, you've got the nutrition, all this is already incorporated, and we've forgotten all of that. So just having a network of holistic practitioners and the society that really holds space for that, where we can all have meaningful jobs and labors. But yeah, I think it is in particular a symptom of the West, because I think the West has really cut itself off from the old traditions, bought into science is going to solve everything, and didn't protect science from capitalism and from personal interest.
Right. I think that's part of the problem, is they feel that if there isn't some sort of Newtonian study behind it to prove it, then it's not really valid. Meanwhile, there's these cultures, there's Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine that are well documented going back thousands of years. Because we don't study them in the West, then they don't get any validity here. And for example, there was an amazing Chinese healer that I worked with, but he can't even get licensed to practice here. And it's really sad, because there's very, very effective healing techniques, and some of these other healing modalities address the holistic self of the person. So yeah, I hope that as we move forward in the future, we're going to see more of what people are calling integrative medicine. I know with my clients, I would say, okay, I'm going to hit your nutrition, I'm going to hit your physical. And then if they were open, I'd say, okay, we're going to hit the spiritual. We're going to do some shamanic work here. But then maybe there's something where I say, okay, we've got some scar tissue here, and I'm going to send you to my friend who's a massage therapist. And that I think is definitely happening more and more. But I think that's a trend that will continue as we go along. So just to wrap it up here, to recap things, it sounds like kind of taking more of the ancient wisdom of the holistic view of everything, taking all the environmental factors into account, is really crucial to changing, and also not being hard on yourself, like, oh, I failed, I did this, I did that. But also not being a victim, saying, well, I was really stressed. Well, I had a bad day. Well, I had to. Well, I'm an addict. Well, I had trauma. Well, I had this. And a lot of people will say those things because they need something to blame. And so there's a balance between not blaming yourself, not being hard on yourself, but also recognizing, like you said, okay, let's look at all the factors involved in this. If you know that every day at 3 o'clock you have this awful commute home and you're not going to get food or whatever it is, then you pack a snack. Like, so you're altering behavior, taking into account, this is how I'm impacted emotionally, physically, whatever. But it also helps us to be more compassionate with people. And I kind of feel like it's something we've lost as adults. A lot of adults, you see those that are parents, especially, if you see a child that's maybe out past their bedtime or hungry, they might start crying or acting up, and the adult knows, okay, this is not a bad kid, they're just hungry or they're just tired. But we don't give ourselves that same kind of, I guess, looking out for that we would if it was a child. And we need to, because our body doesn't function any differently. So yeah, well, I'm going to cut off here so we can go ahead and post this and upload it, and then maybe we'll come back in 10 minutes for questions and answers. Does that work for you? All right, well, thank you very much for your time today. And those that are interested in following up with Joshua, he's got a Facebook page called Paths of Transformation. It's awesome. He's also got a blog by the same name. If you go to his Facebook page, there's a link that says sign up for email, and you can email him and sign up for his list there directly, or you can hit the blue button that says send a message, and that's how you can get in contact with Joshua to talk to him about potentially coaching and working with him one-on-one. He's had a lot of successful clients that he's worked with, and you do all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, you're not just limited to one little thing, because these techniques can be applied to tons of things that people want to accomplish and do, right?
Yeah. I've worked with people on behavioral change. I've worked with people on kind of just balancing mental health issues. I've worked with people on spiritual transformation, right? And all those, typically in all those things, it's one realm is a little bit out of whack, right? And maybe another one has been ignored, and another one's really strong. So it is that whole holistic method of which ones do we really need to support and navigate through.
So it sounds like you're kind of adapting to the person. Like you might use this skill here, or they might need more of this skill, but it sounds like you've got a pretty big bucket of tools that you use. Like no technique is exact same depending on the client, right?
Yeah,
kind of adapting to them.
It really has to be client-centered, right? And it really has to, and that's why I bring in a lot of the modern science and the old traditions and a lot of intuition and just listening to the client and really getting a sense of like what bits need to be focused on and awareness brought. So nutrition and grounding a lot of times for people having a lot of spiritual crises, right? Or maybe introducing some more the philosophical or spiritual to people who are getting lost in the cycles of behaviors and addiction, and then working on behaviors all throughout all that. And it's great. It's fun. It's the most rewarding thing. Like I do with any of my days is when you're there and you're able to listen and like really just start brainstorming with people. And that's what it ends up becoming, right? It's their brainstorming.
Yeah. And you can work with anyone, anywhere, right? Because you can work remotely as well. So it's not just people that are in person. Because I know you're based out of Oregon, but you've worked online with clients as well.
I'm based in Portland. But I do coaching for everybody, and I work with people on Skype, phone calls. Always want to make sure we can Skype a little bit, so because that face-to-face is really important. But phone sessions, Skype sessions. I do hypnosis, so if there's something we really need to work on, I'll send out a hypnosis recording. And then I do, for people in the Portland area, I'll do energy work also with Reiki. And it's all from that aspect of I fell apart and like shattered mentally, physically, and everything. And I had to figure out, hey, I need to put all these pieces together. And the universe worked with me. And so I have to throw that out there. Thanks for the teachers who came through my life to like teach. And all the little miracles that pointed me in the right directions and to gather all this. And then I've been able to use this to help other people, which is
that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. We'll take a break and we'll be back in a few minutes to go live in the group and answer some questions. And I know we'll probably be having you back on here to talk about more specific things, but we opened up a pretty giant box of everything today, which is awesome. And then we can dive more into detail in a future video series. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Have a great day.